I divorced my CEO wife after she chose her assistant over me, and then reunited with my childhood sweetheart. I used to measure my days in sidewalks and shade trees. As a city planner in Brookline, I spent my mornings tracing bike lanes across maps and my afternoons in neighborhood meetings where coffee went cold on folding tables. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Problems you could put on a whiteboard and fix with paint, patience, and a petition. At home, the walls were glass and polished concrete, because Mara liked angles and light. She said the house photographed well, and I said that was not the point of a house. We laughed, then didn't. That was us in a line, my steady, quiet pride, her fast, curated confidence. Mara ran Luminex, a beauty tech startup that turned into a real corporation while I was approving curb cuts. She woke before the sun, built decks through lunch, and ate dinner over investor calls. "We're weeks from acquisition," she'd say, tapping her temple like a metronome. "This is a season." I nodded. I believed seasons passed. I believed in promised vacations and the mythical off switch after product launch. The assistant arrived in the middle of that season. Julian, stylist behind his ear, tie never crooked, voice always at the volume of private rooms. He wasn't rude. He was efficient. He learned my coffee order by the second week and kept a tiny notebook of preferences that made everyone feel seen. "You've got a good one," the head of PR told me at the gala, meaning Mara, not me, and I said thank you because I was raised to be grateful for what I had. When Mara introduced us as the team, she sometimes meant Luminex and sometimes meant Mara and Julian. Words shift meaning under fluorescent light. I noticed, and then decided not to make noticing my personality. There were the late-night emails, the breakfast huddles, the VIP seating charts that always landed Julian between Mara and whatever donor liked founders who never blinked. I handled the dog, the groceries, the leaking sink, the neighbor's complaint about construction dust. "I owe you a real weekend," she said, and kissed the top of my head while reading an airport delay. "I don't want a weekend," I said. "I want my wife." She smiled like I had delivered the correct, expected line. When the Luminex Investor Day invite arrived, lights, live stream, a stage big enough to land a plane, Mara rehearsed in our living room until the neighbors messaged, "We can hear greatness through the drywall." I circled a seat on the floor plan. "Back row is safe," I joked. "Front row is love," she said, and I wrote front row in pen, like it mattered to anyone but me. I didn't know then that the seat was a script I wasn't in anymore. I realized the script had been rewritten while I was still learning my first line. Investor Day was a cathedral of light. LED panels stacked like windows, mic packs clipped to backs, camera tracks gliding along the front row like sharks that had learned the choreography. I wore the dark jacket Mara liked, and a tie she never noticed. "You look like home," she said, brushing lint from my shoulder, and handed Julian her phone. When we checked in, the volunteers scanned badges and directed family to the front left. Julian's badge said Chief of Staff, which wasn't his title yesterday. Opening notes, video montage, applause. Mara walked out to a standing ovation that felt personal even to people who didn't know her. She smiled, made a half joke about sleep, and pivoted into numbers the way swimmers turn at the wall. I filmed a few seconds, then put my phone down, wanting to remember with eyes instead of rectangles. Midway through, she called for "the person who makes my life work," and I rose, stupidly, because I am a mammal that responds to my name even when my name is not said. "Julian," she beamed, "join me." He did, smooth as a second hand crossing 12. The crowd clapped with a relief that had nothing to do with me. She lifted his wrist like a prize fighter, told the room he'd kept the company alive, praised his judgment, his loyalty, his steadiness. I felt my face do something my face had never done. A camera swept across our row, and I tried to unhappen it with posture. When questions opened, an investor asked how the leadership team balanced personal lives with scale. Mara said, "Partnership is about showing up with the person who shows up for you." The room hummed with it. Phones recorded. Afterward, backstage smelled like hairspray and warmed electronics. Mara hugged donors, posed in front of the step-in repeat, and looped an arm through Julian's. "We'll see you at the after," she said, a pronoun that excluded me by geometry. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Later," she mouthed, already turning. Carla from HR size found mine, then looked away, as if to say, I see it, too. Outside, I walked the block twice, once fast, and once as if the sidewalk might split. My phone pulsed with texts from friends. Proud of Mara. Big night. Who's the guy? I typed, until the screen timed out, and I saw my reflection. I couldn't tell if I was a husband in the audience or a stranger clapping politely. Anger arrived in staccato. I slammed a cabinet, then apologized to the cabinet. I ran 3 hard miles and didn't feel any cleaner at the end. Shame arrived in a lower register. I replayed 1,000 tiny choices, my deference, my jokes about VIP seating, my flexible sense of self. That night Mara came home at 1:12 a.m. Glitter still in her hair like an argument. You left early, she said mildly, as if I had slipped out of a movie I hadn't wanted to see. You introduced Julian as the person who makes your life work, I said. He is, she replied, dropping keys into a bowl. At work. Words have weight, I said. So does payroll, she said, and took off her heels. I needed my wife, I said. You needed a narrative, she said, and flinched at her own sentence. We didn't sleep. Dawn poured over Chrome, and we sat across a quartz island like 2 countries pretending it was still peacetime. The acquisition closes next quarter, she said softly. Everything is optics until then. Please don't make drama. I didn't make anything, I said. I noticed it. I returned the spare key to her office that morning. I called my mother and fixed her porch light. I approved a parklet outside a cafe where college kids argue about rent and pepper sauce. I answered a neighbor's email about a lost cat. I did good, small things and felt both sturdy and absurd. At dusk, a text pinged from an unknown number. Asterisk, I'm sorry you had to watch that. Asterisk. Who is this? Asterisk, Carla. HR. I shouldn't text. But I saw your face. Asterisk. What am I not seeing? She wrote not my story to tell. Then after a long bubble. Asterisk, travel pairings changed 6 months ago. Assistant only approvals. Someone flagged it. Leadership said optics. Asterisk. I stared at that screen until the words lost their outlines. Then I put on a clean shirt and went to a community meeting about sidewalk trees. People fought about roots lifting pavers. I spoke about soil volume and compromise. It felt like remembering how to be a person. It also felt like sandbags against a rising river. I still didn't know how high the river would get. The day after Investor Day, Mara sent a calendar invite titled Reset. It had a half-hour slot and no location. I accepted. She did not show. Julian emailed, running long, apologies, which felt like an auto-reply from a life I no longer lived. That evening, I cooked a pan of shakshuka and ate it standing at the counter, because chairs invited conversation. The dog watched me like I was a program buffering. Carla called from a number that blocked caller ID. This is off the record, she said immediately, and probably a bad idea. You already texted, I said. We're both bad at good ideas. She laughed once, then sighed. We had 2 HR flags. Assistant-only travel approvals and comped suites coded under wellness. The CFO asked questions. He got told to focus on runway and closing conditions. I think you should protect yourself. How? I asked. Document what you feel you know and what you actually know, she said. There's a difference. Get a therapist or a notebook. Preferably both. I bought a notebook with a red spine because it was closest to the register. I wrote dates, the precise phrasing of phrases, the hollow smell of our house at noon. I wrote, asterisk, I am not crazy, I am lonely. Asterisk. The next morning, Lena appeared on the sidewalk like a door I hadn't tried in years. She had moved back to town to help her sister with a new baby and to run the little bookstore on Maple that somehow still sells hardcovers. We met at 13 at a church lock-in where we made fun of a sermon and got caught. We kissed once behind the gym, and then our families moved in opposite directions like conveyor belts. Now she stood under our street's only oak, holding a paper bag of returns. You live here? She asked, scrunching her nose at the glass. For now, I said. You? Above the shop, she said. Creaky floors, honest light. We promised coffee. We meant it. That afternoon, an investor posted a recap reel. Mara in a metallic blazer, Julian at her elbow, captioned asterisk, choose people who choose you. Asterisk, I closed the app and sat on the floor with the dog. I wondered when choosing me had stopped being one of Mara's possible choices. Mara's reset became a series of reschedules, then a forwarded invite to a couple's therapist who had no evening appointments for 3 weeks. Optics, she wrote. We should have something on the books. I showed up at session 1 with my red notebook and a list of sentences I wanted to say without shaking. Mara showed up late and left early to take a board call that can't move. We were 2 people demonstrating effort for a third person paid to notice demonstrations. That night she stood in the doorway and said, I can't do this emotional audit right now. I can't be your reputation laundromat, I said. She blinked like I had spoken in dialect. Carla texted, board dinner tomorrow. Seating chart has them side by side again. Then another. There's an acquisition PR deck in draft that removed spouse references for brand clarity. If you hear that phrase, breathe before responding. I Googled brand clarity until the phrase lost meaning, then slept on the couch and dreamed about sidewalks that led into water. The board dinner was at a restaurant with tables you couldn't move and candles you couldn't blow out. I told Mara I'd meet her after. She said, it's not that kind of after. Julian hovered at the bar like a lighthouse. When Mara made a toast, she thanked my closest partner without a name. It was almost tender in its vagueness. People who didn't know us smiled. People who did gave me a widened-eye sympathy I wanted to step out of like a coat. On the walk home, I counted streetlights. At 12 I stopped and took out my phone. I typed, I want a divorce, and erased it. I typed, we need to separate, and erased it. At 19, I called Lena and asked if her shop needed shelves. Always, she said. Come by. I have tea that tastes like cedar. In her back room, we sanded a board and the grain lifted under my hands like a map I recognized. You look like you're carrying boxes you can't set down, she said. I think my marriage is a press release, I said. I don't know what to do with that. Start with telling the truth out loud, she said, handing me a pencil. I wrote, slowly. I am done performing loyalty to someone who performs me. I filed on a Wednesday morning because it was the day I took the bus. The courthouse felt like a place where walls hold stories they don't repeat. The clerk said my name carefully. I signed my name carefully. When I stepped back onto the steps, the air tasted like pencil shavings and rain. I texted Mara a copy of the filing and a single sentence. We both deserve clarity that isn't curated. Her reply arrived in 3 dots and a paragraph. We agreed to try therapy. This is punitive. Please reconsider. I didn't. I forwarded the contact for a mediator and put my phone on airplane mode like I was landing somewhere new. Lena found me that evening in the cookbook aisle, reading a recipe like a prayer. I'm proud of you, she said simply. We walked to the river where teenagers skateboard under the bridge like they were born with wheels. Was there a moment? She asked. A before and after? Investor Day, I said, and told her the part about applause and absence. I kept thinking of the front row, I said, like the seat was the shape of my place in her life. I saved you that seat in 10th grade, she said softly. You gave your speech about walkable cities, and your voice shook and then steadied. You look like yourself. We repaired a bike in her shop's back room, grease under our nails, and a radio whispering through static. I went home to emails from Mara's counsel proposing interim agreements surrounding publicity. I declined the publicity clause and accepted the parts about the dog and the house. I sent a simple line about not wanting to be mentioned in brand content. At midnight, Carla called. Small thing, she said, but HR flagged the travel pattern months ago. Leadership sidelined it. I filed the memo. If this becomes a question of timelines, you're not the unreliable narrator. I don't want to be a narrator, I said. I want to be a person. Then be one, she said. They'll write their story. Write yours with receipts. I opened the red notebook and wrote the first date I had tried not to remember. We kept our reconnection quiet, not secret. Lena insisted on doors, not caves. People should be able to find us, she said, but not film us. We walked old streets and named the trees, because my work made me the sort of person who knows trees. We cooked chickpeas with harissa until the kitchen smelled like warmth. When our hands touched at the sink, we didn't flinch like guilty teenagers. We paused, breathed, and checked for the tug of old patterns. Are we cushioning a fall? She asked, eyes clear. I'm building a floor, I said, and I want it to hold. We told small truths like scouts leaving markers. I said I feared being seen as vengeful. She said she feared becoming somebody's second choice. We wrote our boundaries with verbs. We decided there would be no overnight stays until the mediation started. We decided not to post about anything. News traveled anyway. A friend DM'd a screenshot of a group chat where someone had typed, asterisk he moved on in a week. Must have been emotional cheating. Asterisk another said, asterisk Mara's focusing on the company. He's clout chasing. Asterisk Lena read them and shrugged. People narrate what preserves their maps, she said. Let them keep their maps. At the shop, a woman asked for the new edition of a grief workbook, and we both went quiet at the coincidence. We have 3, Lena said. I rang her up, grateful for cash drawers that still ding. At night, I wrote in the red notebook about the way Lena closed the store. Stack, lock, flip sign, deep breath, lights. Kara's choreography. A week later, the acquisition's PR deck leaked to a trade site. A reporter used a screenshot with a caption bubble. Asterisk founders must align their personal brands with the growth thesis. Asterisk the spouse slide was blank. My name had become white space. White space is honest until someone writes in it with a Sharpie. The backlash grew legs. A gossip account posted a clip from Investor Day with a caption about the power of choosing the person who keeps you afloat, and my DMs became a baton relay of pity and judgment. Mara posted a photo of a sunrise from the office with the text asterisk separated for months. Grateful for respectful privacy. Asterisk I reread it 3 times, counting syllables like a curse. My phone rattled with relatives choosing the path of least friction. Asterisk give her space. Asterisk asterisk she's under pressure. Asterisk asterisk be a gentleman. Asterisk Carla sent a 1-line email. Asterisk if needed, I can attest to when the travel pairings changed. Asterisk I printed it and slid it into the red notebook behind a copy of the filing. I didn't want to make a case. I wanted to keep my hands on the wheel of my own car. Lena and I had our first fight about pace. I moved fast because stopping felt like drowning. She moved slow because she had learned that rushing is how you drop the eggs. I don't want to be punished for being steady, she said. I don't want to be punished for finally moving, I said. We stood in the doorway like people on different elevators. Then we sat on the floor and named what belonged to whom, like a divorce without lawyers. We kept the tenderness. A guy from my basketball group texted to ask, asterisk you okay? Asterisk I wrote, yes, then no, then, asterisk I'm learning. Asterisk he wrote back a pickup time and didn't ask for a story. I put on my old sneakers and ran plays that didn't require a microphone. That night, a junior staffer from Luminex messaged me from a burner account. Asterisk board dinner seating charts show a pattern. Invoices show comp suites. Asterisk another message followed with dates, CCs, some's coded under wellness. I didn't forward them to anyone. I printed and filed them. The red notebook got heavy in the way that makes books feel like anchors. If I was going to speak, I would speak once, clearly, and with proof. The question was when to open my mouth without spitting fire. Mediation started in a room that tried to look like a living room, but smelled like pens. The mediator explained confidentiality and the difference between feelings and facts. Mara sat with a legal pad and a controlled breath. We've been separated for months, she began, and the mediator nodded toward me. I learned of the separation when I read the Sunrise Post. I said. Mara's jaw worked like a machine with grit in it. You withdrew, she said. You became a ghost in your own house. I returned a key, I said, and I watered the plants. We made progress on property and calendars. We agreed that the dog stays with me, weekdays, and with her on weekends, when she is in town. We paused on publicity. No references to each other in brand content, I said. No insinuations about timelines. Mara asked for a carve-out for a leadership narrative. The mediator asked, gently, what does that mean? Mara did not answer in a way that felt like English. I opened the red notebook and slid across a printout of HR's flag travel pattern. Carla's memo header visible, the rest blacked for names. I slid the burner messages, redacted, the totals visible. I slid the seating charts with 2 circles in the corner, M plus J. I'm not asking for punishment, I said. I am asking that our personal story not be rearranged to protect multiples on a spreadsheet. Silence has shape. This one had edges. Mara blinked, then said, that's a partial story. Offer the rest, I said. She didn't. Her lawyer cleared his throat. The mediator suggested we break. In the hall, Carla stood from a chair I had not seen her in. I'm here as a person, she said. If anyone asks, I was never here. Were you in the room when they decided optics mattered more than policy? I asked. I was in the room when policy became branding, she said quietly. We went back in and agreed to a clause. One statement, if any, approved by both, no timelines recast. Mara signed with a sigh that sounded like something unspooling fast. I wrote the statement that night with Lena sitting cross-legged on my rug, reading email drafts like weather forecasts. We kept it spare. Asterisk, we are divorcing. We wish each other peace. We will not be commenting further. Asterisk, I attached the clause and sent it to Mara for joint release. She replied with track changes that added, we separated months ago, and I wrote back, asterisk strike. Asterisk, the lawyer chimed in with a paragraph about forward focus and gratitude. I wrote, asterisk strike. Asterisk, then I slept for 3 hours and dreamed of a road that kept becoming a river. The next day, I posted one thing that wasn't a statement. A photo of the river under the bridge, teenagers coasting through light like small, precise planets. Caption, asterisk, building a life that doesn't need an audience. Asterisk, comments were kind like rain. A few were knives dressed as fruit. I didn't bite them. At the family gathering that weekend, my mother's birthday, cake with too much frosting, my aunt asked, what really happened? And I said, the public story and the private truth diverged, and I chose to live in one. She nodded like I'd chosen a sensible jacket. My cousin blurted, tell them about the assistant, and I said, no villains, just choices. He rolled his eyes, and I let them roll. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Mara had posted a behind-the-scenes reel with Julian miking her up, captioned, asterisk, grateful for the person who shows up at 4 a.m. Asterisk, the clause didn't cover reels. The comments crowned them a power duo. I sat on the porch steps and counted breaths. Then Carla texted, asterisk, board called an inquiry. Not for romance. For policy. Your memo forced it. Asterisk, I hadn't filed a memo. Someone had. If a machine starts moving in your favor, you don't climb inside it. But you can stand clear and let it show its gears in daylight. The inquiry didn't make headlines. It made calendars. Meetings multiplied. Language softened until it meant nothing. Review, alignment, risk surfaces. I kept working while other people defined risk. I approved a pilot for shade sales over a playground, and an elder called me, young man, in a tone that tasted like the inside of a candy wrapper. At night, Lena and I made a list of things we could control: meals, screens, sleep, the dog's silly haircut. Mara's allies stopped liking my posts in polite stages. One unfollowed. One sent a text that read, I'm Switzerland, which is what people say when they want to pretend neutrality is a moral stance. Julian stayed invisible in public, very visible in reels. Mara messaged once, please stop making me look like the villain, and I stared at the sentence for a full minute before closing the app without replying. I didn't know how to help someone leave a story they were writing for themselves. Lena and I hit our first big fear test. She saw an old photo of Mara and me at a street fair, laughing under lanterns, and went quiet for an hour. I'm not a consolation prize, she said finally. You're the prize I forgot was on the shelf? I said, then regretted the metaphor instantly. We laughed, then didn't. We walked to the river and didn't talk about rivers. At mediation's second session, we finalized the house. I would keep it until spring, then sell. The dog clause remained a small miracle. Money was boring and therefore manageable. The only part that felt larger than paperwork was the habit of our names in the same sentence. Uncoupling a sentence can take longer than untangling a deed. Carla called late. Sponsors paused, she said. They don't like inquiries. Her voice was not triumphant. I hope she lands, she said softly. I hope you do too. Hope is an honest word until somebody tries to use it as a saving rope. We planned a weekend without plans. No statements, no meetings, no puzzles we couldn't solve with our hands. We drove to the coast in a car that smelled like wet dog and old coffee. Lena read aloud from a novel and then from the owner's manual because I said I liked the soothing certainty of torque specs. The ocean was flat as steel. We walked until our calves ached and said the names of the birds we actually knew. Back at the motel, she asked, do you ever miss the version of her who looked at you like the front row? Yes, I said, because pretending is corrosive. She probably misses the version of herself who did that, too, Lena said, because compassion is a muscle she uses. We ate clam chowder that tasted like relief. I told Lena about the prenup I had signed without drama. No inheritance, no windfall, just a simple division that assumed I'd always have less. She smiled. Turns out you might have more than you thought, she said, nodding toward my steady job and the house I would sell. We laughed at the small flip of expectation, not at anyone's expense. On Sunday night, I scrolled past a niche blog post with a sentence about CCPA concerns related to internal comms repurposed for brand content. It had 3 likes. It would have 100 by morning. The inquiry had found a language it could use without saying affair. Back home, the dog ran figure eights through the living room like a parade. We set a pot of beans to soak and talked about January. No rings, no rush, Lena said. Yes doors, yes dinner. I nodded. We made a list of friends we wanted to invite to a small backyard thing in spring. Nothing official, everything sincere. Then my phone buzzed with a message from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized anyway. Julian wanted to meet, and he wanted to meet alone. We met at a cafe where the chairs hurt on purpose to keep you moving. Julian looked smaller without the stage. He ordered tea and didn't drink it. This isn't an apology, he said, because I don't know which part would deserve one. Start with a noun, I said. He exhaled. I was hired to make her life work. I did that. Somewhere in there, the definition of life moved. I didn't move it. I'm not the ethics committee, I said. I'm the person married to the narrative. He nodded. There's an acquisition clause about leadership stability, he said, sliding a folded paper across the table. It says nothing about spouses, everything about optics. They scrubbed you because you produced variables. I'm telling you because I want you to stop being the screen people project onto. He paused. I think she needs someone who makes the next hour possible. You always wanted to make the next decade good. That's not an insult, I said. It isn't, he said. It's a mismatch. I didn't thank him. I didn't hate him. We sat in the honest ache of 2 people who had held the same person up in different rooms. When he left, he put a wink of cash under the cup like the cafe needed him to be generous. At home, I added the clause to the red notebook. He's not the villain, I told Lena. He's a function. So is gravity, she said. It still pulls. That night, Mara sent the joint statement with the offending line removed. We posted it at the same minute. Comments bloomed and withered in cycles. I turned my phone face down and listened to beans simmer like a room learning how to be quiet. The next morning, the board announced a leadership realignment that kept Mara but widened the circle around her. Widening circles keep people from falling in, but they also create distance. Winter softened our city's edges. Snow muted arguments. Salt replaced them with new ones. I sold the house to a family that liked light. We moved Lena's things into an apartment with floors that creaked honestly and windows that made squares of mourning on the wall. We hosted a backyard potluck in late March. Early daffodils doing their brave yellow work. Friends brought folding chairs and stories that did not center me. Relief can sound like other people laughing. Mara and I maintained a practical kindness. We handed off the dog on time. We paid what we paid without venom. At the final mediation session, she looked at me like a person looks at a bridge they used to cross, but now drive around. I'm sorry, she said, and I believed she was, for a version of the story that once felt possible. I said, me too, and meant it for the parts of myself that had learned to be small to keep the peace. Carla transferred to another company with less shine and more sleep. She sent a postcard that read, "Policy matters again here," and drew a smiley face that looked tired. Julian stayed wherever he had been all along, one step to the left of the spotlight, hand on the mic pack, making hours possible. Lena opened a secondhand section in the shop and filled it with careful, hopeful things. We planned a small ceremony in a friend's yard, not a replacement, not a performance, just a pact we would keep in our pockets like a warm stone. We wrote vows that included verbs: listen, repair, pause, return. On the morning we sent invitations, a message pinged from an unknown account. Asterisk, she wants to talk. One conversation. No cameras. Asterisk. I closed the laptop and watched dust float in a square of sun. Old stories asked to be told again when new ones begin to breathe. We met on a park bench where we had once counted dogs and named them. Mara wore no makeup and an expression I didn't recognize. I thought success meant removing variables, she said, staring at the frozen pond. Turns out, people are the variables, and love is one of them. I wanted to be the constant, I said. I forgot constants can be cages. We spoke like two people translating a book that used to be in a language we thought we understood. She didn't ask to come back. I didn't accuse her of leaving before she walked out. We agreed on durable things: the dog's vet, the holiday schedule, the rule against public commentary dressed as therapy. When we stood, she hugged me like you hug someone who isn't going to save you and never was. At home, Lena and I cooked the good rice. We read the vows and crossed out a flourish that sounded like a trailer. No audience, she reminded me. Just us. We set chairs in the backyard under strings of light. We would coil carefully later. The circle would be small and real. I thought about the front row one last time. I had spent a year trying to sit in a chair I hadn't noticed had been moved. I had spent another year building a life with no stage, only floorboards that took the weight we put on them. I texted Carla a thank you, and she sent back a thumbs up and a photo of her new office plant thriving. Then the doorbell rang. Friends filled the yard with ordinary noise. Heels on flagstone, a laugh that always made me laugh. Lena took my hand, steady as a level. Choose people who choose you. People like to say like a slogan. We chose each other, and then we kept choosing, which is the whole point.